Good evening, Philadelphia. How are you? I am really extremely excited about this Plan, Prepare, Protect webinar series tonight because we have two distinguished guests that have been working on assisting people with wills and tangled titles and just educating them about how to protect their generational wealth. And this was way before I was elected. State Representative Jordan Harris was partnering with Christian Legal Clinics of Philadelphia, and they were holding workshops in his district, educating people from the South Philadelphia area, and I'm sure other areas that he represents, on the importance of making wills and helping them make them for free. And I was like, he gets it. So I didn't have to go to State Representative Jordan Harris to get him to buy into educating people and bringing resources to homeowners, long-time homeowners, assisting in them, helping them to make wills so they can protect their generational wealth. I just want to say thank you, Jordan, and thank you to Heather, and we're going to talk about them more. I just want to say that I'm Tracey Gordon. I am the Registrar of Wills here in Philadelphia, PA, and this is our Plan, Prepare, Protect special edition called the Probate Deferment Initiative. And this is one of the initiatives that I promised during my campaign that I would address and try to assist Philadelphians in getting out of those tangled titles. And I know many of our listeners have heard about what tangled titles were, or maybe you haven't. And we're going to explain to you what our Probate Deferment Initiative is. And then we're going to introduce our state rep and our attorney, Heather Hulit, and she's going to talk to you about some fascinating things she's doing to partner with the Registrar of Wills. We have a family that we may be able to talk about that was in a complicated tangled title that is on their way very close to getting the title in the family member's name. And so I just wanted to let you all know a tangled title simply is an asset that you legally think that you own by way of maybe a parent, father, mother, sister, or somebody in your family died, and you believe you are the legal heir to that property. So you believe it's heir property, we own it, and that's automatic. What you don't know that there are laws around owning property and transferring property in the state of Pennsylvania. And what I'm finding and found within this last year is people do not understand the laws around not only owning property, but how you transfer that property down to your families when you die. There is a process, there's a legal process. There is a right legal process, and then there's one that's wrong that then you leave it up to me to make that decision. So the way that you transfer your generational wealth, A, I own a house. B, I'm going to die. I don't know when, but I am going to die. You don't wait till you get old to make a will. You make a will when you get an asset. You can change it anytime. What we're finding in Philadelphia is people are dying without making wills, and they are leaving, the property is still in their name. So the people that think they own the property can't do legal things with the home or the assets. They can't sell the property. They can't pass the property down to their children. They can't get homeowners insurance to protect for any liability. We live in row houses. If a house catches on fire next door, guarantee you're going to have some smoke or water damage. You can't qualify for the Homestead Act, which Jordan Harris will explain to you how the state and the city allow for residents to be able to get less taxes taken out of them for real estate taxes. You can't qualify for that. Why? Because the home is not in your name, it's in the dead person's name. And so you can't, you're almost, I hate to say this, but it's almost as if you're like a squatter. And then the problem is that this may be generations. So this house you're living in, you're 30 years old. Your mother raised you in this house, your grandmother raised you in this house, and it's in your grandmother's name. Okay? And so that's 1, 2 generations, and then it's you. And maybe 5 other siblings. And then that's when the intestate, and that's when all the drama comes in at, when you don't have a will. So then you go to the state representative job fair, community fair, or you go to your community council person community fair, and they got all these leaflets telling you, hey, there's money, that grant money that you can get to help repair that chimney or the heater or the electric that you can qualify for. And then you go and apply for it. And the first question is, do you own a property? And you're like, yeah, I own a property. And they say, well, prove it. And then you bring whatever you have as proof, and it's still in the dead person's name. And they tell you, you don't qualify for it because it's not in your name. We got houses, you can't even qualify for FEMA. FEMA is emergency assistance from the government when there's a catastrophic loss, like a hurricane. We have people that live in Puerto Rico right now whose roofs was clearly blown off their house. Not this last hurricane, the one before that didn't qualify for FEMA because the house is still in the mother's, the grandmother's name. And this problem is so prevalent in the county of Philadelphia. They're saying loosely that there is about 17,000 or so of those houses that's sitting as dead capital and tangled titles, which is causing stress on your family and their generational wealth. Because a lot of times when you can't get the repairs, you can't sell it, your mother dies, you want to sell the property, you go to the realtor, and the realtor says, you have to go to the registry of wills and you have to probate the estate. What's probate? What do you mean I have to I own this. My mother died, she said I could have it. My grandmother, raised me, and you said there are legal things you have to do. And so you may not have the money for an attorney. You don't know what we're talking about. You don't know what the registry of wills is, which most people don't. They didn't know it was an elected office. Every 4 years, we run for office at the same time that the mayor runs, the same time that the sheriff runs, the same time the city council runs, the registry of wills runs. And so I said, this has to stop. And in order for me to be able to help you as a registrar of wills, is I need to come out my office and get to the citizens of Philadelphia and let them know what my office does. What's the role of my office? It's not a city office, it's a state office. I want to teach you all that when somebody dies, the first person that you need to contact is not the funeral director. I mean, you do need to contact the funeral director to make the arrangements, but I'm talking about the business of accessing money from the bank account, accessing money from any stocks or bonds, accessing if they have a car note or a car, house, mortgage. You need to come to the Register of Wills, and then we will take you through the process. And so I'd like to introduce my guest. So my first guest again is State Representative Jordan Harris from the 186th. He's previously served as a chairman of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus. Rep. Harris is a leading progressive voice in the Pennsylvania legislature on issues that matter most to his constituents, including criminal justice reform, which he's done a fantastic job. We need reform, and he has been the leading voice in the city dealing with criminal justice reform and definitely also education reform. Our next guest is Ms. Attorney Heather Hulit. She is the legal director at Christian Legal Clinics of Philadelphia, CLCP. She is also counsel at Bernie and Sang, where she practiced education law. Heather was a child advocate attorney at the Defender Association, representing youth and dependency proceedings. She also earned her Juris Doctorate at Temple University, yay, Temple, Beasley School of Law in 2012. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Sharon so she can give you an update, or really, I'm a little kind of dramatic with it, and I try to talk in layman terms so you all can understand what I mean about the severity that you're in sitting in a house that's in a dead person's name. She'll take you through the legal terminology and also some of the consequences, and then we'll get started with our guest, State Representative Jordan Harris and attorney Heather Hulit. Sharon?
Yes, hello everyone. I am Sharon Wilson, the solicitor at the Register of Wills office. I thought that the Register actually gave you a great lead into what we're going to talk about today. But the one thing that I want to say, the fact that a house is unnamed, or rather titled in the name of a decedent, is not being taken care of, is getting back taxes. She saw that as an issue and designed this program that my colleague Terry Booker is going to tell you more about. But the one thing that I want to say is we wouldn't need this program if y'all would just write a will, because then we would know who that property belongs to. We could get that estate probated. We could get it transferred over to the next person. We'd be talking about writing a deed and going forward. So as you hear Terry talk about this program, I want you to keep in mind that currently we believe there to be about 17,000 tangled titles in Philadelphia. We believe there's more, and we will have more detail once Pew finishes its study on Philadelphia. But there's at least 17,000 of these properties. And we could just put a big dent in this problem if we just say, hey, could you write a will? And it doesn't have to be detailed, and the will doesn't have to be an encyclopedia. It just needs to say, if you're going to be a responsible property owner, make a decision about who's going to own your property at your death. That's all. So in any event, the Register created what we call the Probate Deferment Initiative. It's a push to get those of you who actually are living in homes that are titled in someone's name who has died to move. So I'm going to turn it over to Terry and ask her to tell you more in detail about our program, what it's doing right now, and how you can become a part of it if you're interested.
So, thank you, Madam Register. Thank you, Sharon. So the Probate Deferment Initiative is designed for those of you with or without a will who cannot afford the probate fees. So in order to probate, you have to pay. So what the program does is defer the cost of payment until the sale of the home. And as long as you are in the property, we are not going to look for those fees. But one of the great things about the program is not only do we defer the cost of probate, we also, through our partnership with Commissioner Leonard, we are able to waive the fee of filing that new deed that you're going to create. And not you, but the attorney, the free legal service or agency that's going to help you take care of the whole estate from the probate all the way through to the filing of that deed. And that's the great thing about PDI. We're going to help you untangle that title and give you free legal assistance to do that. Now, if you find yourself in a tangled title, or you know someone in a tangled title, please send them over to row.pdi@phila.gov, and we will help you get to the agency that's going to help take care of you best.
Great.
And if you don't have access to the email, our phone number is 215-686-5260. And there will be a prompt that will transfer you to the legal department that will help you help get your information over to the Probate Deferment Initiative unit. Because we had gotten so much information from the legal community saying that my clients can't afford the fees. And as a registrar, I use executive privilege to defer those because I can't waive the fees, but I can defer them. So if you're staying in your house, you don't have to worry about it. We're not coming after you. There's no interest. We just can't waive them. But when you do go to do the actual transfer, it's not my office. Many people think that the recorder of deeds and the register of wills is one and the same. No, the recorder of deeds is a total different office in City Hall, and is ran by Commissioner Jim Leonard. And once we sold him to the program, he said, hey, I will waive our fees. So this is a beautiful partnership. The main thing that I want you all to understand about the importance of the Probate Deferment Initiative is the fact that you're going to have free legal assistance, because a lot of the work, the paperwork is technical, and you're not attorney, so you don't know how to navigate that system. And this is where Christian Legal Clinic of Philadelphia has come in very strong. And I'm going to turn it over to Heather. Can you take us through your office process from the intake to the completion when helping the constituents that need assistance who come through the Tangled title? What's the process once you get the referral either from us or they just come to you all for the service on their own?
So it's a great question. Neighborhood clinics is our process. Right now, actually, there's a clinic running virtually. It's our Hunting Park clinic. And every month we have 8 clinics altogether that run. I have 8 different locations, rather. They're either bi-weekly or monthly. And so pre-COVID, the idea being that you don't have to come down to Center City, which some people never come to. That's not their neighborhood, right? You don't have to take the elevator up one of these fancy buildings. You're going to go to the church you already get your turkey from every year. You're going to go to the community center you already trust and know, because that's where you get your backpacks. That's where that event is always. It's already a trusted place. And you're going to come there through somebody you've already seen before, right? That's the clinic coordinator. And the legal clinics happen there. Right now they're virtual. And they're going to be moving to a hybrid virtual and back in person here soon. But that's our intake, right? That's our whole intake. Some people come in outside of that intake when there's special circumstances, but that's our intake. Those happen on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Monday evenings, we have a clinic. A couple of them happen on Saturday mornings. There's lots of entryways. An easy Tangled title case, my process on an easy Tangled title case, it's a deceased parent on the will with 1 or 2 heirs who talk and get along. Wonderful case. Whether there's a will or not, that's a really easy case. And so my initial conversation with him is a lot of defining terms, because this is a whole other language that people don't speak. It's very legalese, right? It's an area of law. It's got a lot of legalese. Locks people out, right? So defining terms, making it not seem so lofty and scary, but like, this is what it is. The steps, getting all the paperwork, and just sort of walking them through the different steps. Right off the bat, we're applying for Tangled title. We're applying for Probate Deferment Initiative. We're applying to all the programs. We partner with law students to help us draft the deeds. We walk through the steps. We help them with the inheritance tax. We help them through recording the deed, walk them all the way through. We want to partner with our clients, right? On a more complicated Tangled title case, we may spend a long time doing things like being 3-way with family members, doing a little family meeting, because maybe it's deceased grandparents who had 6 kids between them, and some of them are deceased, but they have kids. So now we have 9 heirs to a property, and they don't all talk. So, the client might have good contact with 3 or 4, but, she doesn't even totally know where that one lives. She has to call her cousin who might talk to. It gets really complicated really fast once one generation has passed from the title holder. So some of those cases hang out for a lot longer while we try to just move people as a group into a same direction, because certainly a deed with 9 people on it is not super productive. So getting people to agree on how those things should go, getting them to agree on a direction. There's always a lot of, families are hard. And so it's getting people to move in the same direction. There's some wealth involved. And so explaining all these processes to people. To give an example, one of the first family to go through the Probate Deferment Initiative, they were a blessing because it was 3 children of the title holder. So it was one of those easy Tangled title cases, but one where I anticipated conflict that wasn't there. It was 2 sisters and a brother, and they get along. One of them lives there with her daughter. The other 2 don't. They could have easily given her a hard time since she's the one benefiting from the property, but they did it. So they're in the process of probating now, and they'll all 3 go on the title when it's time. But the fact that they all gelled and got along was a huge help to their case, because it wasn't about grabbing wealth. It was about, being fair and making sure that the property got titled correctly and didn't go to waste.
Sharon,
Yes.
talk to them a little bit about, because this particular case that Heather just talked about, they actually had a will.
Mhm.
They just never came in to get the will probated until the house became in disrepair and they were looking to qualify for some improvement grants. So they never came. And it's like, I believe they didn't come because they probably didn't even know.
They probably don't know. But this is the one thing that we want to get across to people. Dead people cannot transfer property. Dead people cannot transfer property. Say that in your sleep, because that's the reason why you have to raise an estate in order to get the deed in your name. Now, an estate encompasses the rights of that dead person and can then transfer the property. So if you're living in a property and it's in a deceased person's name, you have to raise an estate. If you don't have the money to raise an estate, then you need to contact the office and PDI will assist you. So people do not understand that. They think that it automatically passes to me. What do you mean? It does not automatically pass to you. What's more likely to automatically pass down are the taxes on that property, the interest on the mortgage that's continuing to run, and then that property will be taken from you. You'll be looking at sheriff's sale before you get an opportunity to do anything. Time passes quickly. It is not unusual to see in the legal department somebody whose death occurred 10 years ago,
Longer.
20 years ago. After 21 years, you even got to get permission to open up an estate. So time passes quickly, Register. And I think people don't realize, and that's one of the reasons I'm so happy that we do these presentations.
And I just want to tell you all guys, it's a very ugly situation sometimes when the families come in, because sometimes people don't know that they could just come down, inquire, and inquire to open an estate. They don't need the permission of their brothers and sisters to do it. So you may have a sister or brother that's strong-willed and say, no, I don't want to talk about it. Well, I do, because I know that a part of this estate, I should inherit because I was a direct blood, relative. And they don't realize that they can come down to 180 and we will give you the information to begin the process.
Yep.
The problem is you don't want to wait till the 21 years, because after 21 years, when you don't open an estate, you have to go to orphans court. And to explain that part to them, Heather.
Thankfully, I have not had to touch that.
Okay.
That gets to a level where we would refer it out. We have not had to handle that.
Right. Well, that's
we
good.
have a couple of estate attorneys that we would be referring that to.
Sharon, explain that to them,
it's
Sharon.
It's an experience you don't need, Heather, but you have to go to orphans court. You have to file in front of the judge and tell the judge that it's been 21 years since this estate was open. And you got to explain to the judge, where you been? Where you been for the past 21 years? And where are the heirs? And now all of those people that you decided that you didn't want to talk to anymore in life, you got to find out where they are. That brother, that sister, that cousin, maybe even an aunt, you got to find out where they are. You got to notice them, and you have to have a good service address for them. And that adds another step to what we're talking about, because you got to do all of that before you can then come back and then apply to open up to be administrator of the estate at the Register of Wills.
So if anybody is on that owns property and asset, make the will.
Yeah.
Make the will so your families won't have to do this when you die. They want the heartaches. Oh, you should see the arguing. It's very sad when those wills aren't left. Simply, I know you say, well, I won't be here, I don't have to worry about it. That's pretty selfish, because now you left your family in a more weaker state, because the strong state is, here, this is what I want done to my property. This is the person that I feel should be my executive. Here's my will. Let somebody know where your will is. And then they don't even get to me, because your will, your last will and testament is you got hopefully you get a self-proven affidavit. We talked about that. We're not going to talk about that in depth tonight, but you can go on PHLROW ROW on our Facebook, and we've done workshops on that. But I want to talk to State Representative Jordan Harris, and I just wanted to know, can you talk to us about the work that you're doing on the Tangled title crisis, and what made you, why did it come to your attention, State Rep? I'm curious.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me tonight. I've been working with Christian Legal Services, 7, 8 years, I think. We worked very closely with Jamie down there, who was great. And what we would do quarterly in my district is we hosted wills clinics for seniors. And we would travel throughout different parts of the district and host these clinics where seniors were able to come. They could get a will, a power of attorney, a medical power of attorney, all executed and notarized on that very same day. And literally, I don't know if you know the exact time we started, Heather, but I'm saying 7 or 8 years. We've been doing this like literally 4 times a year. Hundreds of seniors have been able to come through the wills clinic and get wills. And it's crazy because sadly we've had some seniors pass away since actually getting their wills, and families have called the office and actually talked about the fact that they got their will done. The reason why we started this is honestly because of the work we were doing with Christian Legal Services. But for me, I've seen in our community and throughout my district, folks who did not have wills, but who own properties. And you got grandkids living in the house. Grandmom died 30, 40 years ago. She had 5 kids. Yep. And now you living in the house that's actually not yours. It's your aunts and uncles' homes, and they don't necessarily get along, or whatever the case may be. They may love each other and get along, but the problem is, you're living in a property that you have no right to. You can't get any services. You can't get any help because the property's not in your name. And what we're actually doing is you're losing a generation's worth of wealth simply because you don't have a document that might take you a half an hour to 45 minutes to put together. And the other thing that I think people always say is, well, I don't have anything. Well, that's not true. We all have something. So it may be big, it may be small, but we all have something when we leave this earth. And, a will for me, and why we did this, because it was about, making sure that the decedent, the person who passed away, that their wishes were respected. And the truth is, once you're gone, we can only assume what it is you might want to do. You have the opportunity now, while you're in the land of the living, to make your wishes plain and clear on what you want to have. So we've been blessed with our partnership. We haven't been able to do it this year because of COVID.
I know.
But we've been blessed to really help hundreds, probably at this point, thousands of folks throughout my district fully execute wills.
And I think that's incredible. I walked into one of your workshops. It was packed.
Yeah.
Like, you have community stuff like when we giving away food and stuff. No, that place was packed. Of course, Terry was there as a volunteer attorney. We're looking for volunteer attorneys if they're listening. Sharon, quickly tell them about the intestate and about the automatic will that's left to them, whether they make one or not, through the state of Pennsylvania.
We're talking about that will that the state of Pennsylvania drew for each and every one of us. The state of Pennsylvania did not trust that you would get around to drafting your will. You didn't go to Representative Harris's public event to find out about it. You didn't call Christian legal clinics to find out about it. You died without a will, and the state of Pennsylvania wrote one for you. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, their will is dependent very heavily on biology. So it lists who would take your estate in order of biology. Now, some of you might turn over in your grave to find out that your uncle or your sister is the next one in line. That person that you might not have a relationship with, that you might not have seen, that you hadn't talked to, and people that you feel closer to, regardless of blood, would be omitted. So they wrote that will for you. And as we said earlier, it's not really about the amount of your estate. Whatever it is yours. And you should be able to dictate what happens with it. And when you say things like, oh, I don't have much, well, one of the things that wills help to preserve is family unity. You got a family. How about we help try to keep it together? The other thing is to think about what happened to real property in the city of Philadelphia during the pandemic. Houses are selling now for fully a third, almost a half more than they were valued for before the pandemic. There isn't a lot of product on the market, not a lot of houses up for sale. So there are things that you own that you can't even foresee what they might be worth at the time of your death. So just take care and write that will.
Particularly in our older neighborhoods in South Philly and North Philly, many of us, that's what we pass down our homes to our families. We want to try to get the information out. Just make it a discussion. Mom, make a will. Grandma, if you want me to have this house, there's no such thing as a verbal will. There's no such thing. I have grandkids coming in front of me and they're crying and they have some of their aunts there saying, yes, Mama Mary wanted Jamila to have this house, and that's what she said. But when she died, she had 4 living kids. The granddaughter doesn't come in that line of intestate. It has to go, those 4 children have to agree and sign off that little Jamila, the granddaughter, gets it. How many of you all think that's going to happen? Heather just told you like a miracle story, you know? You know how families are. It could be that one person, and not necessarily is it going to hold it up, but you still going to have to come through citation hearings. I'm still going to have to review it and assign administrator who I think is best going to handle it. Sometimes they fight so much, I have to assign an outside attorney, which is going to cost your estate. So while you're thinking of not doing it, because if I make a will, I'm going to die, and you're causing extra stress on your family, and you're not protecting your hard-earned work, your generational wealth. You have the right to say who you want to inherit your home, your pictures, your intellectual property, your cell phone. This is yours. Passcodes, your photographs, your knickknacks, your children, if they're minors. You may have kids that's disabled. You need to make a will. If something happens to me, I have a disabled child, I want this disabled child to be protected and raised by, and you name the person. Because once you die, you're leaving it up to the state of Pennsylvania through the intestate laws and register will Tracey Gordon to make a sound decision in your best interest. But who's more better to make that sound decision? Register Tracey or you, who owns the property? What motivated you, Heather, to work on Tangled Titles, and what made you make the Probate Deferment Initiative a priority for your organization? Because you all have really stepped up to the plate for us. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
I mean, our whole ministry, right, is using our legal know-how that happens to be the thing that we have, right, to address poverty and injustice where we are. We're in Philadelphia, where poverty is really high. When we look at what you guys keep referring to, the 17,000 or so estimated tangled title properties, that's just wealth that is not helping people, right? So that's what's going on for Philly. So that becomes our priority because that's what's going on where we are. And I think there's 2 aspects to this. One is maintaining housing, right? So the people that come in who aren't on the title, so then they can't get the repair help from, is it Philadelphia Housing, PHDC, Housing Development Corporation. They give huge grants. I have a client getting a huge grant, like repairing your rear wall, replacing your roof, your heating system, like these huge, huge several $1,000 repairs. They come in and they're stuck, right? that's a big issue. They need to be able to stay in their home. That's a big issue. And there's another program, Tangled Title Fund, that prioritizes those folks who need to untangle a title to maintain where they live. But the other aspect of this that is also really important is the generational wealth that you guys keep referring to. Like when you think about I live in South Philly, right? So this, exactly what you're saying, I live in a block where we may be one of a handful of people who have a mortgage. You can see the benefit of the people who are living in grandma's house. I don't know if they've all titled their house, but that's how, they're not paying the same bills. They have kids. I've watched some kids go from being 4 to being 17. I have no idea how that happened. And they're going to be able to borrow against that house and they get to college. Those little small businesses, people have capital and equity. That's how they get it done. So there's maintaining a status quo and there's helping people get up and out. And I feel like that property, when you look at what people went through to own property, look at what Black families went through to own property, right? One of the major ways, right, people held Black families down is by keeping them in a bracket, by not letting them get property. So when you actually get property and then it gets jammed up because people don't know. And I think that really goes, probate isn't the only legal issue that does this, right? We make things mysterious and you have to have special access. I think it's an issue across a lot of areas. It's not helping anyone, right? We made it so complicated. People make the will and they check the box. I did the responsible thing. And then the next person makes a will passing down the property that their mom gave them in her will. They don't know they have to go through this whole thing. No. They just don't know. There's a lot that could be done to make the process, educate people in the process so that it's not this mysterious world that only lawyers can mess around in. The majority of people in Philadelphia aren't lawyers. The majority of people in Philadelphia aren't wealthy and don't have a family lawyer on tap or an estate lawyer on tap, right? It needs to be accessible so the average person can access it because these 17,000 properties aren't owned by, wealthy people. Wealthy people don't have a problem passing down wealth. They do it really well, right? The average people need to be able to do this without getting stuck. They need to know they need to do it.
And that's the real scary part, because I was trying to understand, because I went back I started doing some research and I asked Sharon questions all the time, and I'm trying to figure out where did it get to a point where people didn't talk about making wills. And I wanted to ask the state rep, because I really truly want to work with you on this. Tell me some additional legislation that could be sponsored to resolve the tangled title, or to some initiative that will make it a requirement, a course requirement. People need to know what a will is, what probate means. I'm not trying to teach them to be a lawyer, but you need to know. So when you do buy a house, how come it's so automatic that you get homeowners insurance, the HOA plan they're going to get, because the mortgages want to protect against a catastrophe, right? When you get an automobile, right? Buy an automobile, that's mandated by law that you have to get automobile insurance. Life insurance, when I bought my house, the agent introduced me to Prudential. They said, because you got 4 little kids, just in case you want to be able to, you might have a funeral or something happens. No one told me when I went to settlement, state rep, that the most important insurance that I need when I buy this house is to make a will so I can protect it just in case I die. I wanted to ask you, what type of legislation, or what are your thoughts on it? Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I think there are options available. I actually like the option of, putting this as a part of the home buyer's process. I think the only concern that I would have with that is that we also have to go back and make sure that folks keep their wills updated, because if you buy a house at 30, the person you want to leave it to at 30 might not be the same person you want to leave it to at 60. Okay. So there would need to be, in my view, a process of how you update it. But at the very least, there could be a requirement in the home buyer's process in Pennsylvania that there's information given to you about wills and writing a will and protecting your asset. That's not a bad idea. I think also we could just make the process more user-friendly and not so cumbersome.
Yes.
There's a lot of, and you know, my trial lawyer friends may not like to hear me say this, but there are a lot of processes that are cumbersome, that you have to have an attorney for, that are so you know, so intertwined with just living, that in my view, you know, they should be processes that you don't necessarily need a lawyer for. You can have one if you want, but you should not need one for, because it's just a part of life. I mean, listen, if you have if you have, well, first of all, we all have parents, but if you have a parent who's going to leave something to you and they pass away, at some point in time, you're going to have to, open their estate, go through you're going to have to go through this process, right? So if we understand that this is a part of life, my theory is we should make those processes as simple and as easy as possible, and not make them cumbersome processes.
I agree with you on that. And I want Sharon to touch on that, because that's come up a lot. Best practice, at least coming from me as a registrar of wills, when it comes down to wills, is I think you should, get advice from an attorney, because it's legal. And I just feel like it is is worth so much more to get it done right, as opposed to, going to 1-800 make a will, and you answering questions that are legal that you don't understand, and you may cause more problems with the estate. I love the idea, state rep, to saying making it automatic with all, transfers of any title, that this information has to be put in there. I do agree with you on the updating of the will. And that's just another hurdle. But we got to start somewhere. And Sharon, talk to them a little bit about why getting advice from an attorney when you make your will is a best practice.
Well, we certainly, I know you agree with some of the points that the state rep made, because we've already done PPPs to organizations of realtors, telling them the same thing. This information about making a will should happen at the time of settlement. And I also want to point out that in my experience as an attorney in private practice for more than 25 years, whenever somebody makes that first will, getting them to make the second will, to update, to maintain, it's not that hard, because they have an educational experience with the first will. And that tells them, okay, if somebody dies, if you have another kid, if there's another life event. And that's one of the reasons why I want you to go to an attorney to get your will done. Yeah, you can jump on some internet and get your will done, but in private practice, I actually send things to my estate clients and say, hey, has life changed? They call me because they have a relationship with me. So the first thing is, you want to go to counsel because you want somebody that you can have a long-time relationship with, because life changes over time, right? Second of all, one of the things that we unfortunately have the ability to do is to deny a will into probate, because it does not have all of the qualities necessary under the statute. And that happens when people try to do it themselves. They don't understand everything that needs to be in there. Sometimes they may forget to appoint the administrator, executor. They may forget to sign or not sign in the correct place. The paper doesn't have what we refer to as testamentary intent, means we can't even tell whether they wrote it thinking about death or they just wrote it because they was thinking about it. So, and if you mess it up, then you don't have a will. So to the extent that you are appointing something that's important in your life, I think the idea that the money behind the attorney, and remember, they all don't cost the same, is worth it to make sure that you get it right. If you don't get it right, we're not allowed to guess what we think you were talking about. We just have to deny. And judges are under the same sort of constraint. They can't sort of try to figure it out. They just have to say, I don't know, no will. So to that extent, the best practice is always to consult an attorney. Even if you write the will yourself, you can always say, have an attorney review it. Even if you go to one of those places and you thinking that I'm going to have somebody else do it, you can always have an attorney review it and just pay a consultation fee rather than a drafting fee. And that's why I advise attorneys whenever possible. It's just like buying a, difference between a cheap pair of shoes and a nice pair of shoes. A nice pair of shoes wear a long time and look good. A cheap pair of shoes, maybe they'll cover your feet, but do they really do the necessary? And sometimes those internet wills, they just don't do everything that's necessary.
I just want everybody to realize just how important this subject is here in Philadelphia. This Tangled title is really a crisis. It's not anything that we're just trying to make everybody be nervous about. I always say that although we think there's 17,000, there's a potential to be more if you don't have a will now. And I just wanted to ask this last question for both my guests. What more can we do together to resolve the Tangled title crisis, Jordan? What can I do? What can we do as a partnership to, you know, just what you said, the thought about, introducing some type of legislation to make it mandatory that when titles transfer, that this information is given out, as well as updating financial literacy curriculums in our school so they can just learn the basics.
I think transparency and information is the first step to addressing the issues of tangled titles and wills, transfer of wealth. I think, having more conversations like these, I think, making sure that, this is the stuff that we talk about in our churches and our synagogues and our masjids. I mean, like this, it's one of those things where we all know it's going to happen, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
My pastor always say, it's a walk we all got to take. We just don't know when. So if you're going to die, if you know that at some point in time, some decision is going to have to be made about your property or about your assets, you should be preparing and planning for it, just like you have life insurance in your
Mm-hmm.
planning, or just like you're making a decision on grad school or whatever those decisions that we're making, we have to think about that decision. I think Sharon, you said it. I mean, everybody got a family, and do y'all want your family to be arguing, at the casket about who gonna get the house, or
Yep.
who gonna get grandmom earrings, or who gonna get the bracelet and all that other kind of stuff? You know what I mean? Do you want to create that kind of grief for your family? If the answer is no, then you have to have a will. So, for me, I think what we can continue to do is raise awareness about why this is important. We can, look at, what would it take to mandate that some type of information be provided to people when there's some type of transfer of property, as far as real estate. But then the other thing I think is, this all for me falls into the collective bag of just civics.
Yep.
Our children who are in school need to not only know about who the president is or who the governor is, but they also need to know how to write a check. Because it's a lost art form, but there are still certain places to this day that ain't going to accept your Cash App or your Apple Pay. They want you to send them a check. Do
Yep.
you know how to write a check? Do you know how to fill out an envelope to put something in the mail? So this can be, in my view, this should be incorporated in that same type of civics around, just quite honestly, being a citizen and being able to protect yourself, your assets, but more importantly, protect those who are going to have to live when you leave.
I think that's an excellent idea. I definitely will follow up with your office. I think with your leadership role in Harrisburg, I watch you move. I think that's the only way that I'm going to be able to get it on the floor, hopefully through you, because the city of Philadelphia, we send a lot of money to Harrisburg. We send 80 to 100 million per year, and estate taxes. And you know, if we get this fixed, that's more money for them and more money for the city. And it's really a crisis level. And people, I'll just briefly, a real sad story. I was in a hearing, a virtual hearing with a family. It's 5 siblings, 1 deceased, and it was the matriarch was the mother. She died, and one of the children's sons was living there, and one of the other children grandkids was living there. And so they was breaking it when the child has died. He had 3 kids, and so they part of the estate now too. And one of the siblings, like, my mother wouldn't have wanted to sell a house. And I know why she's saying that, because where are you going to buy a house in Philly? The other sibling was like, I want my share. A lot of times we don't have money to buy our sibling out. And so sometimes they have to put their house up for sale, and then you got to find somewhere to live where you've been living all these years with the mortgage already paid, the house is paid for, as opposed to, I'm saying that in certain areas, I think the average rent is like between $1,200 now, whereas you was in a house where it was just taxes. And so, Heather, what more can we do to resolve the Tangled title crisis in your experience? What else can I do as a registrar of wills? What can we do as a team?
So I think things like this are great, right? Because you're raising, it's like buying insurance, you're raising a thing people need to think about that they don't want to think about that can cost, and that takes some time and some bandwidth that you need to dedicate to it. Going back to Rep. Harris's point earlier, it's like how we tell people to go to a shelter, but is there enough space for you? Are there enough affordable attorneys for all the people who need to make a will? Probably not, right? Unless we raise some major programming and partnerships with law schools and lawyers. Are there enough affordable lawyers for all the people, right? Remember where we live, who need a lawyer.
Okay.
And so there really is, and I'm a lawyer, but one of the things that's always frustrated me is that, you know, lots of law only applies to people who can afford to bring that suit. You know, the contract law, you can buy a house that's messed up. You can't bring that suit unless you have the money to bring that suit. Lawyers aren't taking that case for free, right? So law unequally protects people. And this is one of those areas that unfortunately falls into that category. So yes, things are better when there's a lawyer involved, just like it's better to be in a shelter than on the corner of Snyder and Broad. But is there space? Is there really enough space for you? There's not, right? So I think partnerships with law students and law schools to have mass will clinics, right? But then community education around, because people think they're done. They make that will, they think they're done. Right. They think it is now yours because they put it in the will, and that next person is, we see this all the time. So it goes even beyond that. Forgive my dog, she's an attention freak and she likes to bark during these things. I think we really got to push. I mean, there should be pamphlets everywhere, right? Write it everywhere about, like, here's the terminology. Nobody talks like this. So every conversation I start with a client with Tangled Title, I have to start with, I mean, we use terms like to test her. Like, nobody talks like that.
Right. Nobody says that. I can't hardly say it.
I mean, think about taxes. Like the basic personal taxes aren't really that complicated, but it looks complicated. So we go and lose money to H&R Block, right? But if somebody explained to them what's going on and just demystified it, the average person could probably do their own taxes, save a couple $100, right? So I think there's a lot of demystification that can be done here, and a lot of partnership, because, you know, obviously the language isn't going anywhere anytime soon. There's a lot of partnerships. We're in a city with a ton of law schools. Can be done to create. I mean, look at these people and their computer skills and their Adobe skills to make pamphlets, to get stuff out there, to educate people on this stuff.
We even testified in council that maybe we can get a stipend for some of the law students that are working with these cases. So we're looking into that. I love your both of your ideas about the Tangled title. And the fact is, we do need to get more information. We just asked for an increase in our budget solely for the Probate Deferment Initiative, so we can get pamphlets out and we can get some stuff on radio, and you know, just just to get people thinking about it. And like you said, the fair, the terminology. So that's why Tangled Title, when you hear that and you say you're living in a house in a dead person's name, click, that comes right. They know exactly what you're talking about. Because either they're in one or they know somebody in one or they had problems with it. And so as the Registrar of Wills, this is one of my premier initiatives. And we, Terry, of course, Christian Legal Services. Terry, tell them the other agencies that, will help people with the wills. Let them know that before we close, and
there are Philadelphia Legal Assistance, Community Legal Services, Drexel Klein School of Law, Estate Planning Clinic. There is a senior law clinic for those of you who are over 60 and above.
Yes.
So there are a great deal of resources available. And Mark, I believe, did put this in the chat already.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we're going to close. State Rep, what's some of the things up on the Hill that you can tell us about, some initiatives that you want some of your constituents to know that you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, as we enter into the month of June, we're going to be discussing the state's budget, which is a $36 billion product, as well as $7.5 billion in federal dollars that came through the Biden administration. So we're in Harrisburg on Monday, and we'll be starting the process of deciding how we're going to use all of these resources to deliver, in my view, deliver for the most vulnerable communities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
I hope we get some Tangled Title funds, some of that money over here for some of our district. And Heather, how can they reach you at Christian Legal Services? How can they reach you? Phone number?
So I threw our information in the chat, but for
Okay,
folks
good.
who might be on the phone, it's 215-399-0064. That's our main number. If you go to our website, which I should probably also throw in the chat, it's CLCP, it's CLCPHLA, so CLCPHILA.org. There's several numbers on there because, like I said, we have these different sites throughout the community. So you can there's some different access numbers there, but our main number is the way to go. Give us a call. There's a space in one of those clinics for you. And bring your complicated stuff, bring your paperwork. It only gets harder generation down. So we go ahead and jump in and get started.
Again, I personally want to thank you, Heather, for all the work you've done. Thank you, State Representative, for taking time out to join us. I know you have all that work to do with the budget. And I want to close to let you all know we have an exciting new series called The Registrar Reacts. It's premiering July 1st at 6 p.m. And I wanted to let you all know about it. So this is going to be like a fun one. We took movie and TV scenes that address estate planning, wills, and generational wealth. Then we watched and reacted to them. Movies are a great source of entertainment, but we want to make sure you are learning the best lessons possible. So my solicitor, Sharon Wilson, and I watched and reacted to some scenes from Game of Thrones, Queen Sugar, Parks and Rec, Soul Food, and more. We hope you enjoy our new limited series. Starts Thursday, July 1st at 6 p.m. In our first episode, we will be reacting to a scene from Parks and Rec, where Ron Swanson makes a will. So I'd like to thank you all for this special edition of Plan, Prepare, Protect. We are going to take a little break over the summer, but we're going to have these series coming out. Please visit us on all our social media pages at PHLROW. Put that in the search engine of TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it. The Registrar of Wills is online. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, State Representative. And thank you, Heather, for this edition of Plan, Prepare, Protect. Be safe, And don't forget to get your COVID shots, guys. Bye-bye.